Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I just was fixing the YouTube live stream. For some reason, we weren't live. So the first thing I just wanted to mention is that I'm going to make a motion tonight that we send a letter to Senators Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Bob Casey, and Pat Toomey, basically based on what we talked about last week in terms of our need for federal assistance and federal funding related to the deficit that we may have, that the city may face and that cities throughout the state may face. One of the things that has been circulating from the National League of Cities and the National Association of Counties, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, among other groups throughout Pennsylvania, is a letter pledging support for an increase in the federal medical assistance percentage that would provide Pennsylvania and Scranton much needed assistance. So I sent that information out earlier today, and I will make that motion tonight. I'll also read the letter. It's not that lengthy, into the record, basically calling on Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer to help cities with their loss of the loss of revenue that we most likely will face due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is the one thing I'm going to bring up. The second thing I wanted to update everybody on is a meeting that I had last week in regards to 3rd Avenue. I met with the mayor, members of her administration, city engineer John Poshist, police chief Carl Graziano, in relation to the truck traffic on 3rd Avenue due to the weight limit restrictions that have been placed on the Elm Street Bridge. So it was a very good meeting. There are going to be some things that are done there to help the residents of 3rd Avenue. Unfortunately, it's not feasible to reroute truck traffic from 3rd Avenue anyplace else for a number of different reasons. But I did speak to the mayor again earlier today, and they are working on legislation to prohibit brake retarders for the trucks that have Jake brakes. That's a big issue over there. And they're going to step up enforcement for the weight limit of trucks as well, per Chief Graziano. And there may be some other additional things as well. So we'll wait on that. That's all I have. I'll turn it over to Solicitor Hayes. Do you have anything for the caucus?
Bill, I think I'm muted.
Okay, you're good now, sorry.
Oh, good. Earlier today, I spoke with Acting Solicitor Joe O'Brien. He is still trying to track down our contract with the Lackawanna County Solid Waste Authority so that we can review what our contractual obligations are with regard to recycling. I had, per the request of, I think, Councilman Gaughan and Donahue, I had requested that, followed up with him, and he still is in the process of trying to locate that within the law department and has reached out elsewhere. So as soon as I have that, I will circulate that, and then we can address the, see what our contractual obligations are in light of the complaints we're having on the lack of recycling being picked up. He also reported to me that he has a meeting with the lawyers for NRS to address those items that were previously sent to them back in actually October of last year with requests for information and documentation. And I believe the meeting is next week. So he told me that he would report that back to me at the conclusion of that. This is a new issue, obviously, to Solicitor O'Brien as he's coming into the law department within the last month or so. So those were the two biggest issues. And lastly, I had started a correspondence for Senators Casey and Toomey relating to the HEROES Act. If the council approves the resolution which Council President Gaughan just described, we will make it more specific to the issues that are in that resolution, so that we, so that we're counted amongst the municipalities that want that legislation that was passed in the House to go forward. So that's all I have right now.
Thanks, Kevin.
Solicitor Hayes. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Tom.
So, Solicitor Hayes, that in regard to Northeast revenue, was that the information that President Gaughan requested a meeting or two ago with the correspondence from? Okay, from the
Right.
first, 19, January 1st of 19 to present.
Correct. There were about 7 items that information that had been requested by the law department, really upon the request, I believe, of then Councilwoman Mary Walsh Dempsey rather, and other members of council. And we never had an understanding as to whether NRS had responded or not. So I had sent that, I think, upon the request of council at least 2 weeks ago. I have not received a response to that. I know that, Joe O'Brien is just coming in now as the acting solicitor. He assured me that he has a meeting next week with their council, I believe next week, to raise those issues. So I'll give you an update as soon as I have one.
Yeah, and then the other one, I was glad that you brought up the recycling. I had some questions about that, and then I saw that we got some public comment about the recycling. One thing I saw was that they're saying possibly not collecting commingle till the end of the year.
I mean, that's what's been publicly. That's all I know is what's been publicly reported. So I don't know if anyone has any more information on that. My focus has been on, let's see what does the contract, our agreement say with them, with the authority, and to see what recourse we have.
Yeah, I did get a couple of phone calls about that as well. So
I can't hear Tom or Kevin.
Can you hear me now? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I could hear both of them. Okay, Tom, I don't know if you froze. Okay, we'll wait for Tom to come back online. Solicitor Hayes, the one thing that I wanted to, I don't know if Solicitor Hayes is still on the call. He might have dropped off. When he gets back on, I'm going to request that we get an update from Stevens and Lee on the Act 511 case. I know there was an article in the newspaper that it's not going to the Supreme Court. They rejected they rejected that part of it. What I would like to request is that we get an update on how much has been spent so far, and the cost that we've incurred, and then what that might look like going forward. Now, I remember a few months ago they gave us some different scenarios, but I'd like an update on that. And I think we did lose Solicitor Hayes, so we'll wait for him to get back in. Oh, sorry, Kevin. I think we lost you for a second there.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
The one thing I was saying, Kevin, is what I would like to request, if you could reach out this week to Stevens and Lee. I think it was Mary Ann Gilmartin. What I'd like to know at this point is, based on what I read in the newspaper in regards to the city, the Act 511 case not making it to the Supreme Court and that being denied, and now it has to go back to the Commonwealth Court. Can we get an update from them as to how much has been spent so far? And I believe I went back and looked, and I can't find it. I could ask Lori to send me a copy of it, but I remember that we were given different scenarios for
Right.
what the budget would look like. So I'd just like to know where, an update on that and where we are. I think now is a good time to get that.
No, that's fair. And I spoke with Joe O'Brien on that topic as well. And he is certainly is monitoring the costs. I can tell you that.
Okay, great.
So I will request an update on that.
Okay, thank you.
And on that topic, Bill, it's nobody should interpret the fact that the Supreme Court did not grant King's Bench review of this appeal as there being a problem here. The very small percentage of appeals get King's Bench review. So it will just go through the Commonwealth Court. It's on an expedited track because they have waived oral argument. So it's very possible that an opinion and an order could be issued certainly by the fall. And then if the unsuccessful party was to file an appeal to the Supreme Court, there's, they may not grant aliquotter, so it could, whatever the Commonwealth Court decides could stand. So based on my discussions with Joe O'Brien, it still very well could be the same time, the same timeline, even if the Supreme Court had granted King's Bench review. So nobody should interpret that as an indication that we're going to get a bad result at this point.
Okay, great. Appreciate it. Thank you. Anything else, Solicitor Hayes?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Lori, do you have anything?
Thank you. No, I have nothing.
Okay, thank you, Lori. No, we'll just go around the room. I don't have anything else that I had to add. Councilman Donahue, do you have anything?
It's actually a little funny that we can't locate the recycling contract yet. I mean, it should be on hand, but that's all right. Also, I dropped off the list to Lori, who last Wednesday, that we referenced in caucus last week with the mayor regarding the delinquent garbage bills. And the total in that list does equal around that 16 million, but it's only through 9/13 of last year, but at least it's a starting point. So hopefully the administration, and I know that Pat Sheridan and the new business administrator both have copies of that list. So hopefully that's a starting point to put the sale of receivables for the refuse delinquents out to bid. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rothchild, do you have anything?
Yes, I do have a couple of things. First, I actually, I wanted to ask Councilman McAndrew a question. I know that we talked about this a few weeks ago, and regarding the ATV issue, I've had a lot more complaints. And actually, while I'm on these calls, usually they're riding behind my house, but you can't hear them right now. So could you just jot my memory here for a moment? What did SPD say about handling that situation? Is there anything that we can do about it right now? And then the fireworks is something else that we had gotten complaints about.
Well, the ATV thing, we were informed. I know I had a couple of motorcycles drive by here. Actually, the kid that was killed last week is from up the alley, so it's beyond nuisance, if anything. But my understanding is, they can issue citations. They can't chase them, and the ordinance is where it is. I know they're going to try to do better with it, and that's where we left off at that. And we got the ordinance on fireworks today. I don't know if you saw that in your email.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I mean, people are prepared for it around the 4th of July weekend, but not 3, 4, 5 weeks out, which it has been, which is crazy. But like I said, I read the ordinance today, and people have to call, and they call the non-emergency number, which I had somewhere. And while they're occurring, I guess that's the only way right now to do that, or try to curtail that.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to add, this is Bill. I just want to add one thing on that. I actually, Dr. Rothchild, I talked to the mayor late today, and we had started talking about the ATV situation because we're obviously, all of us are still getting complaints about it. And I had also spoken to the mayor of Dunmore, Tim Burke, and what they had done and kind of modeled an ordinance off of what Music had done, barring people from using gas stations to pump gas directly into any ATV that's not properly licensed and legally allowed on public highways, roads, and streets. So I did talk to the mayor about that. They are looking at potentially trying to get legislation down to us to address that issue before the August recess. So
Okay,
hopefully that'll help.
great. And then I did have something else just to update my fellow council members on. So with regards to the issues of the Barry Isaac contract and problems with LIPS, I was involved today in a planning session with members from the OECD department, from the director of LIPS and our new BA, Mr. Dealey, and a couple of interns were there as well. So we all had a working session, and actually there are a lot of great things that I feel came out of that. I think we all know that there's been problems in the LIPS department in terms of how complaints are handled and addressed. And I know that they're behind, and there's a lot of problems with blight throughout the city. Those are important to me as well. And I think that the process needs to be changed, and they're well aware of that, and discussing how to do that and what ways to change it to make it better. And I think that with these conversations, these meetings, they're going to be bringing a proposal to us within a few weeks of what they would like to do in the LIPS department. And I think that the other members will be, I think, satisfied when they see those changes, and they are looking to take some quick actions. It's not going to change overnight, but even though I'm disappointed as well about the Barry ISIT contract being put on hold, but how it was explained to me is that not only just like the fiscally responsible way to go, but they know what problems there are between lack of communication and lack of some of the policies, and just needs to take some time to organize better in that department. And so they're working on doing that. So it's not that Barry ISIT wouldn't be needed in the future. There are things that we could give to them to do. But right now, I think that this is our best option. I feel pretty confident in the team down there at City Hall to take care of the situation. I'll continue to be involved with it as well. I intend on seeing this through.
That is one thing I did forget to bring up. I was going to see if maybe we could request that Mr. Dealey come in next week. I mean, I had initial concerns too with ISIT as, the one and with the contract and the cost and what we were getting out of it.
Right.
My concern is that we approved the contract for a calendar year and, nothing's being done. So I just want to know that there's a plan. And
yeah, and I
what
agree.
we're doing.
I didn't want to see it be put on the back burner either, because I felt that it was important, but they did review the contract, and they felt too that there were some things in it that might not be necessary right now, and that there were changes that they could make without it.
Yes. And my main concern is just that we would have to just amend that contract, since we already legislatively approved it, more so on the process side than the end outcome side, I guess you would say.
Where they stand right now with Barry ISIT, my understanding is that that they've been in touch with them. They've been very understanding about the situation that the city of Scranton is in, and in August they're going to revisit things and update them on how we're doing financially to see how the impacts of COVID have been. And so I expect that if there will be changes to that contract, that will.
Well, because
I
I did have a chance to go back and look at it, and it was real date specific, because the original legislation had it for 2 years. The previous council cut it from 2 years to 1 year for completion. So it did have specific dates of, I believe it was November 20th, 2019 was a start date, and then a completion date of November 20th, 2020. So just so we're not.
Yeah, we've already been way off from that.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, anything else, Dr. Rothchild?
No, that's it. I just, I can't really share details just yet. They're going to be putting together a proposal and bringing to us, and so I look forward to everyone else hearing about what their ideas are for the city.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Councilman McAndrew, do you have anything?
No, just that I hope that proposal or that plan comes soon. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Schuster, anything that you'd like to add?
All right, so I missed a couple things there. I don't know what happened with the internet connection. It seems like you guys are talking about the LIPS review.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I saw in the letter that it seemed like the company that was doing it seemed to understand the situation that we're in now. And I mean, I wish I caught the beginning of this conversation, but maybe at this point in time, maybe we could go back to them and see if we can get a discounted rate. I know that might sound out of the box, but it seemed like with the new situation since that contract occurred, it may be a possibility.
Yeah, I don't know. Dr. Rothchild, you?
It might be. Yeah, I'm not sure either. That's not something that was discussed with me as a possibility yet. I think it's just more of a wait and see if our revenue loss is as much as anticipated in the next coming months.
Okay. Anything else, Councilman Schuster?
No, I guess other than I wish I heard a little bit more of that conversation before I cut out. But thank you.
Okay. All right. In terms of the agenda, before we wrap up the caucus, we don't have any new legislation on the agenda tonight. We do have a few third order items. We have the controller's report, some correspondence, the Lackawanna County Department of Planning and Economic Development Regional Planning Commission annual report, which has a lot of information about SAPA, which I know some will find interesting. And we also received the resume for the business administrator, the new business administrator, Carl Dealey, on that appointments in seventh order. And then we also have the agreement between the city and NEPA Alliance for the credit checks on the applications for the small business relief program. So does anybody have any questions on this, any of the agenda items? Okay. All right. I don't have anything else to add, so we'll wrap this caucus up and we'll come back at 6:30 and start our regular meeting. Thanks, everybody. I'd like to call this public meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community, especially Ed Rakowski, a retired Scranton police detective. Let us take a special moment of silence tonight for people in our community and throughout the world who are suffering or who have passed away from the coronavirus. Let us think about them and their families at this time, that they may find peace. Let us think now about the doctors, nurses, researchers, and all medical professionals and first responders who seek to heal and help those affected and who put themselves at risk in the process. May they find protection and peace. Whether we are home or abroad, surrounded by many people suffering from this illness or only a few, let us stick together, endure together, mourn together, persist and prepare together, and in place of our anxiety, let us continue to hope and find peace. Thank you. Ms. Carrera, roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster? Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild?
Here.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Mr. Gaughan?
Here. Thank you, Ms. Carrera. Mrs. Reed, please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Thank you. Excuse me. Third order. 3A, Controller's Report for month ending May 31, 2020. 3B, correspondence received from Barry Isett and Associates Incorporated, dated June 15, 2020, regarding licensing, inspections, and permits department assessment. 3C, Lackawanna County Department of Planning and Economic Development, Regional Planning Commission Annual Report 2019, received June 19, 2020. 3D, Resume of City of Scranton Business Administrator, Mayoral Appointee.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Are there any comments on any of the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
I do. I was asked to announce, although the St. Joseph's Annual Picnic has been canceled this year, there are still some events that are going to be taking place. The $10,000 cash raffle, returns need to be in by July 2nd. The Go Joe 23 ride-along, you need to register by July 10th. The WNEP telethon, which is Saturday, July 25th, which is 8 to 10. And also their chicken dinner, which is in place of the picnic this year, will be Sunday, July 26th, noon to 5 at Marywood University. Tickets are required in advance. For more information, please visit St. Joe's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman McAndrew. Anyone else have any announcements?
You know what, I wouldn't mind commenting on a third order item. The correspondence we got between Mr. Ice and Associates, I was disappointed to hear that we weren't going to take a deep dive into the LIPS department. I think it would have helped us out with some of the policies and procedures there, some of the things that could have been problematic in the past from the last administration. And I mean, maybe it's something that we look into with the situation and the understanding that they've had, that we could maybe look into the scope of the work or adjustment of price, something like that to get into that. And maybe if it can't be done this year, the administration gets into it next year.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any announcements? Any other announcements?
I have a couple of announcements. First, I saw today that La Festa, the Italian festival downtown, is going to be canceled this year, unfortunately, due to COVID-19. I don't think it was unexpected, but that's one of my favorite events of the year, especially as an Italian myself. And a couple of other things. Over the weekend on Friday, Black Scranton held a Juneteenth celebration at Naog Park, which I attended, and I thought was a really wonderful event and a great way to celebrate the emancipation of slaves. And then something else over the weekend that I had attended, we held a flag raising at City Hall to commemorate the 100th year of the suffrage movement and women gaining the right to vote. And I want to thank the Women's Whistle Stop for helping to put on the flag raising. I know a lot of other events were planned for that day, which also had to be put on hold, but they did have a race car parade, and they went around to some different places throughout Lackawanna County. So I was happy to be a part of that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. Anyone else, any announcements? I just have two. Once again, I'd just like to say that if anyone would like to comment on agenda items or city business, please send those comments in writing to our city clerk, Lori Reed, by emailing lreed@scrantonpa.gov. Council will accept public comment until the day of our meeting, Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Public comment is reviewed by the council prior to our meeting and is placed on the official record and in the minutes of our meetings. Council's agenda is being posted for public review the Friday before our Tuesday meeting. Our agenda and minutes can be accessed by going to www.scrantonpa.gov and clicking on the City Council page. So if anyone is interested to read the public comment, the questions and the comment from members of the public, many of them are very good questions and some valid, very valid points. Again, you can access that by going to www.scrantonpa.gov, clicking on the council page, and then just look in our minutes, and that they'll be in the official record. And the last announcement I have, I just want to wish my Aunt Peggy a happy birthday. Her birthday's tomorrow. She's a faithful viewer of the council meetings, so I want to wish her a happy birthday. That's all I have. Mrs. Reed, fourth order.
Thank you. Fourth order, citizens participation.
Thank you. Will someone please make a motion to accept public comment from the following individuals: Thomas Coyne, Marie Schumacher, and Stephen Sabia?
So moved.
Okay, there's been a motion and was
Second.
there a second? There's been a second on the question.
Just on the question, I just want to come back with, because one of the concerns we talked about a little bit in caucus was illegal fireworks, and I do have the number. So this number needs to be called while it's happening, so the police can get there. This is the police desk non-emergency number. Okay, it's 570-558-8345. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question?
Yeah, so while Mr. McAndrew is bringing up that, I wanted to bring that up as well, because I did get a couple calls about it. I was told that several people had called that number, but it didn't seem like too much was done. Do we know if there's any other number offhand to call, or this is the number?
That's all I got.
Yeah. But just to let people know, I mean, according to the city ordinances, we can't be igniting fireworks on city property or within 150 feet of any occupied building.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Just in regards to the public comment that was submitted, Mr. Coyne had submitted a lengthy statement and some questions. So I'm still going through those, and I'll do my best to answer those that pertain to council, and then the ones that pertain to the administration, I will get to the mayor and members of her staff. Ms. Schumacher had asked a few questions, so we'll try to answer those. The mayor had just sent Mrs. Reed and I don't know if members of council were copied on it, but if you weren't, we'll send that out to you. She did answer all of Ms. Schumacher's questions from the last few months. It's in a Word document, so we'll get that out to Ms. Schumacher, and Mr. Sabia also had several comments that he submitted, which we appreciate. So there's been a motion, a second, been on the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved. Mrs. Reed?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Councilman Schuster, do you have any motions or comments at this time?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on one of the public comments that we got. And I think several people in the public comment posed a lot of good questions this week. But one was in regard to the tax assessment appeals. And I just wanted to say that prior to the city and the state's reaction to the COVID pandemic, the school district and the city were in talks with shared services about fighting the tax appeals. And I think that's something that's going to be continued once City Hall opens up. So I do think there's a potential for savings and a way for us to hold ground when it comes to tax appeals.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilman Schuster?
No, that's all.
Okay. Councilman McAndrew, do you have any motions or comments? Oh, sorry, Mark, you're muted.
I've been approached by a few citizens regarding a Hometown Heroes banner program for Scranton. I also attended the Neighborhood Works virtual meeting on June 15th, which was the West Side Pride West Scranton Neighborhood Plan. At that meeting, when asked for feedback, I made mention of the Hometown Heroes banner program. Although it's in the preliminary stages, that plan, they thought it was a pretty good idea. I believe that with everything going on right now in our country and in our city, right now, this would be a great time to foster and focus on our city's history and recognize our very own hometown heroes, the brave men and women that have fought for our freedoms. I would like to see every part of the city participate, along with our local veterans organizations. I know there's some, there's some logistics involved, but for the most part, it wouldn't cost the city anything because sponsors would pay for it. But, if I wanted a banner for my father, who was a Korean veteran, of course, I would do that. And maybe we just need some help in bringing together, DPW, maybe the fire department, to hang these with bucket trucks or whatever. So with that said, I would like to make a motion right now with the blessing of my colleagues on council to start the Scranton Hometown Heroes banner program process to include the formation of a committee.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's been a motion and a second on the question. On the question, Councilman McAndrew, I think that is a good idea, and I would be in favor of that. I know that this is something that was discussed maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and at that time, the previous administration had met with members of various veterans organizations, and at that time, they were more focused on the monument down at Scranton High School. But that was 2 or 3 years ago, so maybe there will be some interest this time, and I think it is definitely something worth exploring, and I think it's a great idea, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved. Anything else, Councilman McAndrew?
No, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments at this time?
Yes, I do have a few comments. I've been getting a lot of complaints in recently, a few things that I think need to be forwarded to the LIPS department. One of them is actually right near where I live, and it's on Harrison Avenue. A man who lives across the street from the problem, he contacted me to let me know that there's an overgrown empty lot, and it's in between Harrison House, which I think is 712 Harrison Avenue, and the property of 706 Harrison Avenue. And so it's actually so overgrown, it's going onto the sidewalks, and pedestrians are choosing to cross the street in the middle there rather than at the crosswalk because of the issues on that side of the road. So I think that is definitely a safety hazard and needs to be taken care of pretty quickly so that people can safely use that sidewalk. So Lori, Mrs. Reed, if you don't mind sending that correspondence to LIPS. And then the other issue over the weekend, I guess I was pretty busy over the weekend. It was the first weekend in a while that I felt more like a council person, getting to be out in the community. And so I'm happy for that. I went over to the 900 block of Quincy Avenue, where the neighbors there had requested me to come and take a look at the issues that they're experiencing. And so about 7 or 8 of them walked along with me up the street and also onto Costello Court. And there are just numerous issues, too many for me to go over right now on the call. I will write out a list that could be sent over to LIPS. I know, perhaps not all of them will be able to be addressed, or at least addressed quickly. But yeah, I think that they need to be aware that these are problems for the neighbors who live there. And someone had approached me today. This is correspondence that I believe can be sent to DPW. They had complained that the streetlights were not working on Washington Avenue, I think between Cooper's where they are, and all the way down towards the courthouse. They said it's pretty dark on that street, so if someone can take a look at those lights and then replace the lights that need to be taken care of. And lastly, this was something that I went over in Caucus that I just wanted to go over briefly again. I was involved in a work session earlier today between members of the OECD department, LIPS, and our new BA business administrator, Mr. Carl Dealey. And the purpose of the work session was to discuss the issues more specific to the LIPS department, like quality of life tickets and demolition of properties, and a lot of areas that there hasn't been a great process for, and that they haven't really been able to work efficiently on. And so we're trying to come up with a good plan that could be initiated pretty quickly to help address those issues. That's something that has been very important to me. And I think will help with a lot of these complaints that we've been receiving from residents. So I'll be able to discuss more of that within the next few weeks. They plan on bringing a proposal to council. I think their timeline was like between 3 to 4 weeks. They know that we're going to be going on a break, so it'll certainly be before August.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. Councilman Donahue, do you have any motions or comments?
Just to just follow up on Councilwoman Rothschild's streetlight complaints. I believe Miss Reed, you have a direct line to get those looked at, right?
Yes, I do.
So that was, what was it, North Washington from Coopers to
Yes. Yeah.
all the way down to Lackawanna?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, we did talk, in caucus at the recycling time. We still haven't gotten our hands on the recycling contract. So we're going to continue working on that to see what we want to first look at the contract to see what our options are moving forward in terms of how we would go about looking for different options for the commingles. In terms of the LIPS review, I would very much like for Mr. Dealy to just come in at some point to explain, what the plan is. I was a little critical of, the firm that was selected in the beginning, and I had some, cost concerns as well. But at the same time, it was still a contract that was approved by council. So I just want to make sure that there is a plan going forward to address the issues in the LIPS department, because really, if you fix everything else in the city but don't touch in city government and don't touch the LIPS department, nothing else matters. Because a lot of everything that happens flows through there in one way or another. I was surprised to see the fire chief's resignation, but I would like to wish him the best of luck. And also just to remind the administration, while they're conducting their national search, that the fire chief's salary is budgeted at $84,900. We also, late this afternoon, we received a condescending response from the administration regarding my questions for the reopening of City Hall, the administration's plan. All I'm simply trying to find out is what's, as Lackawanna County moves into green, how will City Hall be opened? What will be accessible to the public? What will not be? And then in terms of the furloughed employees, the mayor did cite union issues as to not respond to those. And those were questions just as who is processing refuse bills, who's conducting health inspections, housing inspections, who's responding to the quality of life complaints, and who is overseeing the bidding purchasing process. So I'll be forwarding some more requests onto the administration, such as how many occupancy permits have been issued since March 15th, how many health inspections have been conducted, how many construction permits have been issued, how many quality of life violations and or warnings were issued. So I'll be forwarding those along to Mrs. Reed tomorrow to send along to the administration. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Donahue. I just have a few things I want to go over. First, I also want to just mention the resignation of our fire chief, Al Lucas. Just want to say a few things. First, in dealing with people over the last 6 years in city government, I don't think you could find a more dedicated individual serving the city, both as a fireman and then as fire chief. Al Lucas, in my opinion, in the short time he was fire chief, did an absolutely outstanding job. To take the position and then automatically walk into the middle of a pandemic, I thought he led the city's response in a very honorable way. one of the most honest people that I've ever met in city government, one of the most hardworking people, and always forthright with information, and does never, with me, beat around the bush. Just got right to the point and told it like it was. So I just want to say that I thought it was unfortunate that he resigned, but I understand based on the reasons that he gave in the newspaper. And I think it would be very hard to find a better fire chief and a more honest, more hardworking fire chief than Al Lucas. The second thing I want to mention is just a request that we did send to the Licensing and Inspections Department in the 500 block of Harrison Avenue. The gentleman that sent the request to me submitted pictures of overgrown grass on the sidewalk and complaints about snakes. One of the things that I do want to mention, I think this goes without saying, that even though the Licensing and Inspections Department is technically still open, there are, I think, 1 or 2 employees or however many people working there. I think there's only 1 inspector that's actually working right now. So I do know that once the nice weather hits in the spring and in the summer, council gets inundated with requests, and the Office of Licensing and Inspections get inundated with requests, and rightfully so. But I do want to, remind people that if they're not moving as quickly as they usually would, that's because there is only a limited amount of employees because of the furlough. So hopefully that changes when those employees get back in the building and get back to work. Also, I wanted to update everyone on the meeting that I had last week in regards to the issues that have taken place on 3rd Avenue with truck traffic. I had a meeting with the mayor, her chief of staff, other members of her administration, the DPW director, Police Chief Graziano, and our city engineer, John Pocius. And although I think some people over there will be disappointed that we can't reroute truck traffic off of 3rd Avenue, because of the weight restrictions on Elm Street and some other issues that we would have there. The city is going to research legislation which would ban or prohibit brake retarders. So those trucks that have Jake brakes, which is a big issue. Also, Chief Graziano pledged to increase the enforcement of trucks that might be overweight. And there may be some additional things that we might be able to do. So I did speak to the mayor later this afternoon before the council meeting, and she had told me that they are currently working on that, and that should be coming down to us relatively soon, which I think is a good thing. So the ultimate solution to the problem is the replacement of the Elm Street Bridge, which is going to happen, may take 2, 3, 4 years. One of the things that, in speaking with John Pocius, the city engineer, that complicates the matter is it being over the Lackawanna River, and just being in the area that it's in always complicates everything, and it takes a lot of work to replace those types of bridges. So that is the ultimate solution to the problem. But in the meantime, there are some fixes that we're going to look at and hopefully pass soon. And finally, I'd like to make a motion at this time that City Council send a letter to United States Senators Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Bob Casey, and Pat Toomey, asking for an increase in funding to Scranton due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and also to pledge our support for an increase in federal medical assistance percentages that would provide our state, Pennsylvania, and Scranton much needed federal assistance.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second on the question. I just want to say on the question, this is something that we had discussed last week when our business administrator, Pat Sheridan, came in and unfortunately told us, I think what we all might have assumed due to the pandemic, that we may be in a very precarious position at the end of this year in terms of anywhere between $6 and $10 million deficit. Now, as Mr. Sheridan had mentioned, that may change in July and August when we keep getting updated figures. But it looks at this point like many other cities and boroughs and townships throughout Pennsylvania and throughout the country, we may be in some serious trouble financially because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So The National League of Cities and National Association of Counties, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and some other organizations have circulated a letter that they're sending to Mitch McConnell, Senators McConnell and Senator Schumer, that I would like City Council to also sign on to. And I'm gonna, in a second, I'll read that letter into the record. One of the things that they're calling for is for these senators to support an increase in the federal medical assistance percentages, which we'll also include in that letter that we'll send out as well. The federal medical assistance percentages are used in determining the amount of federal matching funds for state expenditures for assistance payments for certain social services and state medical and medical insurance expenditures. This federal medical assistance percentages supports healthcare programs for seniors, children, people with disabilities. And since these programs are not discretionary, the loss of these funds would drain resources to support other programs and infrastructure priorities throughout the state of Pennsylvania. So for every dollar that is spent on Medicare in the state of Pennsylvania, the federal medical assistance percentages also matches that. So we're looking to ask them to support an increase that would really provide Pennsylvania with a few $1 billion, and it would definitely have a positive effect on Scranton. I just want to take a second here and read into the record what I would like sent to Senators McConnell and Senator Schumer. We write today to advocate on behalf of states, territories, counties, cities, and towns, all of which are experiencing historic budget shortfalls as they continue to respond to the pandemic. In less than 2 weeks, the budget years for 45 states and thousands of local governments will begin. Unlike the federal government, these state and local governments must begin their fiscal years on time and with a balanced budget. If the Senate fails to act immediately to support state and local governments, our nation's recovery from the pandemic-induced recession will suffer, and millions of Americans will needlessly be harmed. Previous federal bills responding to COVID-19 provided important support, many through well-established grant programs, yet none allow for the replacement of billions of lost revenue due to COVID-19. More robust and direct stimulus is needed for state and local governments to both rebuild the economy and maintain essential services in education, healthcare, emergency operations, public safety, and more. As we move closer to the end of the budget year, furloughs and job cuts are on the table for many states and localities. These job losses not only affect the provisions of government services, but also add to state unemployment. The damage will get far worse without federal assistance, forcing drastic cuts that will further delay and cancel infrastructure projects, as at least 26 states have announced construction delays for transportation projects. The loss of such projects will ripple through states' construction industry, delaying recovery further. State and local governments also purchase goods and services which add to the nation's output. And in 2019, state and local governments' purchases accounted for 11% of GDP. When these activities slow down, there is an effect of the nation's economy. There is an effect on the nation's economy. Alarmingly, CBO's June letter on its forecast of gross domestic product for 2020 and 2021 found that state and local governments' purchases of goods and services fell by $350 billion, making up 9% of the total decline in GDP. Nearly 15 million Americans are employed by state and local governments. Teachers, first responders, and emergency medical service workers are on the front lines of this crisis, doing the essential work of the country. Government employment continues to suffer substantial losses, with over $1.6 million in state and local government jobs lost since March. Leaders in Washington have expressed support for flexible fiscal aid to states and localities of all sizes. Yet months have gone by and our communities continue to suffer. Americans have a history of standing together in times of crisis and must do so now. And that would be the end of the letter. I just want to make one additional comment that, as I mentioned last week, if we don't receive substantial funding from the federal government and we end up with a deficit between $6 and $10 million, we don't really have that many choices. We're in the same position as nearly all municipalities, boroughs, and townships throughout the state of Pennsylvania and throughout the country. But we really need the support of our leaders in our federal government, because we can't now rely even so much on the state. because of all the issues they're having. But we certainly don't want to end up voting on a budget in November and December where we're have a $10 million deficit, and we're asked to go back to the taxpayers and put the burden on them when they've already suffered and been through so much. So that's all I have to say on that. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved. And that is all I have this week. Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. 5B, no business at this time. 6th order, 6A, no business at this time. 7th order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption. Resolution number 38, 2020, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a memorandum of understanding between the City of Scranton's Office of Economic and Community Development and NEPA Alliance to assist the City of Scranton in providing credit checks on applications for the city's Small Business Relief Program.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question? On the question, I just want to say for both of these grant programs so far, our grant and loan program, to my knowledge, has been a real success. So I do want to thank Eileen Cipriani, the director of the Office of Economic and Community Development, for coming in rather quickly and putting this together and finding money that was, I believe, in a pot since I think the 1990s at some point. Our small businesses throughout the city are obviously suffering. I think moving to the green phase on Friday is a welcome sigh of relief somewhat for these businesses that can still remain up and running and will hopefully get back on their feet. These programs, the small business loan program and the grant program, I think will be a great shot in the arm for them to help them get up and running again. And I wish them all the best and all the success. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for adoption, resolution number 39, 2020, appointment of Carl Deely, 711 North Webster Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18510, to the position of Business Administrator, effective June 1, 2020. Mr. Deely will be replacing Patrick J. Sheridan.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second?
On the question?
Yes, on the question, I would just like to say, after being able to review Mr. Deely's resume and having a few conversations with him, I think over the weekend we spoke at length, I think about our vision for the city and what we would like to see happen here within the next few years. And I am really pleased with this appointment. I feel that he'll do a very good job in the position, and I'm very impressed by his background and the skills that he has to bring to the position as business administrator.
Thank you, Dr. Rothchild. I too want to welcome Mr. Deely to the city of Scranton and to the position of business administrator. I want to thank Mr. Sheridan for all the work he's done in the last 6 months. I think he's done a fine job. I think in terms of Mr. Deely, it is, and looking at his resume, it is sometimes good to have people who are who have a different background and who come from maybe a different perspective. Mr. Sheridan had a really interesting comment to me the one day, maybe a week and a half ago when I was talking to him. He said, in the city of Scranton, maybe the issue in City Hall has been that we've been asking the wrong questions, or looking at a problem the same way for decades and not, stepping outside the box for a minute and looking at it in a different way. So I hope that, this change, and with what Mr. Sheridan has been able to do, and now with the perspective that Mr. Dealey may bring, that we may be able to maybe ask some different questions and look at things in a different way to try to solve some of the very difficult and complex problems that face the city. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted. If there is no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you.